Hi there, this is DnB and welcome back to my channel. So before I go and do the second part of my drum break series, was working on a bit of a project trying to get a song together potentially for that series, and it's morphed into something else, but I think I've got some really interesting things to talk about in this track, and I've kind of stopped at a place where I think it'd be really good for people to see I'm a little bit into the track and I'm about to do some cool bass resampling techniques, and I just want to kind of demonstrate the process I'm going to go through here. So here's a quick little snippet of the track. It's rolling around really nicely. It's definitely got a bit of space to add a few more things and add a bit of interest. And one of the things I've been doing is I want to add these cool bass stabs. So I've got this kind of rolling sub bass here. Which I've made in Serum. If I go to my instrument and bring it up, I was actually following a tutorial on Producer Tech by someone called Creatures, who does quite a cool drum and bass tutorial there. Anyway, he had a really good way of making a sub bass where in Serum you're adding the harmonics to a sine wave, and he's put them on the 1, 3, 5 and 7. And anyway, that's just giving you a sub bass with a bit more kind of fatness in it. And then you're also modulating some of the FM. So as the sound is playing, you're getting this kind of screeching sound that's coming in from the FM, which is sounding really dope. Anyway, so for my project, I've got this sub bass rolling and I'm just playing quite simple notes. I'm playing D sharp and then up one semitone to an E. So I'm not doing very much musically with the bass. The idea here is actually to use distortion and to resample the bass lots of times, recording loads of different flavors of distortion. And just to show an example of what you can get, I have got one here which I did before. I've put some reverb on this definitely, and I've filtered it so I've got it out of the sub range, and so I can play this over the top of my sub, and if I play them together, they can kind of live in the same space because I've taken the sub out of this bass. If I play this one without this filter on, it's definitely a lot fatter without the filter, and it sounds very cool like that, but I quite wanted to use it as a mid bass or an over bass sitting on top of this sub bass that I've got rolling. Okay, so on this sub bass track, I've obviously got a few effects that I've used in Serum, but apart from that, I'm just sidechaining the sub bass to the kick. But when I solo this track, this sidechain is not going to be doing anything, so it's probably just bringing it up in level a bit. To do this technique, it's very simple. All you've actually got to do is get your sub bass track and go and find a distortion unit. Now, I have two that I love to use for this process. One is Trash 2 by Isotope. I always see this now for like £5 or £9 running around. It's always part of deals on Plugin Boutique and places like that. So you can get Trash really cheap now. And the other one is Saturn by FabFilter. All you really got to do is come into these plugins, and I would really suggest turning your actual level of your monitoring down quite a lot, because these plugins just end up blowing your ears off with these crazy amp distortion circuits, and we basically just start running through presets, and you'll see they just give you a completely different tone and texture to the bass you already have. What I'm actually going to do is a trick I showed you before when I did that big drum breaks effects render, is I often like to just record the output of my entire system audio, and I can do that through my interface. I can also do it through my mixer, but at the moment I'm just going to do it through my audio interface, which is a Mo2 M2. What we're going to do is just hit record on this, and now when I start playing, you can see that it's recording whatever I put through it, and that's already quite a crazy bass sound compared to what the original sound like. That one's sounding really cool. Anyway, let's just get into this process. So I just hit record. This is recording anything I'm going to do in Renoise now, and I'm just going to cycle this loop and try loads of different amps and just see what I come up with. That's quite cool. Okay, those are all the aggressive ones. Let's go and experimental. Okay, so I've gone through a whole bunch of trash ones. I'm now going to just mute that and open up Saturn, and then come in here, and this has some cool saturation ones, or these effects ones are all really cool as well. Is that a cool thing at the end? Okay, so I've now gone through and just recorded loads and loads of bass noises. I'm actually going to go through this. It's a little bit tedious now, but I'm going to go through and listen to these sounds and find the ones I want and just clean up this big chunk of audio a little bit. Okay, so I've gone through this big chunk of audio and I've just chopped it all up, and now what I'm actually going to do is just come in and normalize all of these chunks here, just to make sure they're all at the same level, and it means I'm not really going to have to bother limiting them too much later. Some of them do have more peaks than others, as you can see, but it's quite good practice just to try and get them all roughly at the same level. Otherwise some of them are going to blow your ears off and some of them aren't. Okay, so I've resampled that bass and I've sliced it up and I've normalized it, and now I can drag it back into my project. And here, now I've got it in, I'm actually just going to go and put a bunch of slice markers in. Two things to turn on are mono mode, so I'm only going to ever be able to play one instrument at a time. And one other thing I like to have off is this slice trigger function, and that's just going to mean the slices can play through each other. And so it's basically so I can put slices all over this file just as I like, and I'm just going to do this by eye. I can come back in later and fine tune things. I just want to get something that I can get going quite quickly on. Cool, so I've got now this massive audio file with all my bass chops in, and this is actually the one I did before. So now I've got two massive files, and I can now use these. One thing I might do as well is actually just to come, if you see the modulation tab, I've done a little bit of attack to get around the pops and clicks, and then full sustain and a little bit of release as well, which means if I want to just hit notes, just individual stabs quickly, it's going to have a little bit of ring out on the sound. Not enough that there's going to be all this overlapping where the next note's going to have overlapping sounds, just a little bit so it's not going to just stop super abruptly. So I've added a little bit of release to the sounds as well. I'm just going to play a little intro and then I'm going to start jamming around to see what I can come up with. And so yeah, let's roll. It's quite cool. Maybe just like boom, boom. Almost wants to go da da, and maybe have something different here. That's quite nuts, isn't it? Like that. Like a little. That could be cool. So it's gone a little bit mad. I might just start again, actually. I think the problem with this track is putting all these bass sounds in, it's actually just making it sound too full. I quite like how it's a little bit empty. How it's breathing a little bit, but I might put a filter on this track as well and just control some of this super high frequency stuff and see if I can get something to just fit. Quite fat there just to start with. Let's just get something in maybe. Sometimes you end up just having so much fun playing that it's hard to figure out where to start. Yeah, so with this bass technique, I think you have a few options. You can either do what I did earlier and cut the low end out of this bass layer and try and layer stuff over the top. Or if that's not working, you can actually use these bass layers to create new patterns. So mute the original bass, take the filters off and just jam. If I just go, say, copy 2 new patterns down and just swap some of these basses out, we can see how it sounds without that vocal in. Maybe let's try bringing this bass down in here. Hear how it drops in. Maybe we either take some percussion away, potentially. What about that hat? Well, just getting rid of the hat. I can hear a crazy noise here. On that beat. More crazy. Maybe I will duplicate this track and then have one that's not got this filter. Cool, so I finally got this one rolling, and actually I wanted to make it more complicated than it needed to be. Sometimes a simple pattern with variation is just easier for your ear to understand, and adding too many crazy bass noises in just makes it all get a bit too crazy and cluttered. One of the things that gave me the idea to make this tutorial, and I think it's always fun to take things a step further and just explore what you can do with Renoise, is I wanted to actually try and resample again. So we took our original sub bass and we chucked on loads of distortion and we came up with all these cool sounds. And we've now got a pattern that we've made from them, or a sequence. And what my idea is that because even though I've got these notes triggering on different tracks inside of Renoise, what I could do is say put them all together into this group and call it maybe bass resample. And then I could put an instrument macros on this group. And then because they're all triggering the same instrument, even though they're on different tracks, I can come to the instrument effects and I can create one of those macro effects similar to what I did with my drums. I can create it for the bass. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so I've started off very basic and I'm just mapping filter cutoff and filter drive to my first two parameters. I'm then going to go for a distortion, and with distortion let's map drive, and then let's maybe map wet mix to drive and invert the wet mix so that when I pull up the drive the wet mix is coming down, and so I'm not going to get a crazy increase in level. If I just play, still quite mad. If I take that off, sounding okay. Maybe -12 will do. Let's do comb filtering. It's always cool, and maybe we map the note to 1 and we map the dry wet. So comb, note, comb, dry, wet. Another good one to do is pitch. So let's go into the modulation tab and go to pitch and just assign pitch here. So we can pitch this whole thing around. 12 semitones is fine. And what else could we do? Oh, I had this cool idea where if you wanted to say make a stab of one of your bass noises, how would you do it? And so I thought you could add a delay, but then before the delay you add a gain. Maybe I need a better delay effect. What did I use before? I used fast up delay. Let's try fast up delay. Okay, so I've got this cool delay effect now where I've put a gain or nothing, and I've mapped its on and off button to this macro, and then I've also mapped a delays on and off button to the macro, and it basically means I can turn this up, and if you watch these two ticks, as I turn this up the delay comes on and then the gain comes on later, and I can get a sort of, if I time it right, a delay through. I am getting clicks, which I'm not really sure how I would get around. Sometimes you don't get as bad as clicks as others. It just depends where you cut it off, I guess. And maybe the last one we do is a filter, another filter, this time with a high pass and a reverb. So let's do maybe convolver and load a fat plate, and I'm going to do something similar where I'm going to turn on the reverb, or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm going to bring up the reverb from 0 to 100, and I want quite a fast scaling, and then I'm going to turn on the filter, so as the reverb comes up the filter turns on and it pulls the cutoff up, so something like that. And then the on and off wants to be quite sloped, maybe that's not working the right way. Like this. Yes. Verb high pass. This is not turning on. That's not on. There we go. So I've got and made all of these crazy effects now. And what I'm going to actually try and do is resample all the bass, that the sequence that I made, and record it all over again and see if I can't come up with some more cool ideas that maybe I can use in a similar way for more variation as I build the track. Right, so I got another really mental recording there with just some crazy noises in it. I quite like that delay throw because I was getting some quite cool stabs, and there was a few moments there where I definitely heard some cool little stab noises that I might be able to bring in. So I'm going to go through this long passage of sounds and see what I can get out of it. Got some really cool noise in here. Okay, so I've now resampled this entire bass again, and I've just got to put my markers in again, and then we're good to go. Nice. And so now I've got another fat instrument that I can start jamming with again. That sounds really naughty. Then the problem is some of these bass noises are quieter and level, and that's the reason why I would normalize them in this way, but I actually forgot. So what I can do is try and do it here to a certain extent. I can do them. I'm just pressing Command P to normalize in this program, so you can double click areas. Holding Command, I can double click in, and then I can just start to try and bring everything in here up to 0 dB. Let's go. The point of this whole tutorial and why I've taken you through this process and why I thought it would be a good thing to show you is that you can take something quite simple like this sub bass that I started with, that was just a few notes. I'm playing a D sharp and a C sharp, so I'm only playing 2 notes, and I've just resampled them. And firstly, I chucked loads of distortion on and just skipped through presets and resampled all of that. And then I've come into Renoise and I've created this macro instrument doing distortion and drive and comb filtering. And I've then resampled even more. And so just through this process of resampling, I've ended up creating now, if I show you, I've got 1, 2, 3 instruments full of crazy bass sounds. If I go and look at another one, every time I push a note, I'm getting a really cool, distorted, growly, neuro, techie sub bass noise, which is great for breakbeat. It's great for drum and bass. Cool for dubstep. You can really apply this to lots of genres. But I think it's just a very good process to get to a very complex sounding song, complex sounding noises, without actually having to do crazy automation and things like that. It's really fun to do a lot of this stuff. Apart from maybe the sample chopping, I enjoy almost everything in this process. And so I hope this was informative and useful to some of you. And you can catch me in the next couple of weeks with my next drum breaks tutorial. So that's all for me today. Peace.